Hi there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of the Quarantine Chronicles. This is our series, a limited series of Kill Team battle reports with solo wargaming, and this one is fought between the Cradle, the Filth of the Death Guard versus the 15 Fangs of the World Eaters. And in case you're just tuning in to the very first time for the Quarantine Chronicles, if you're wondering what this is a solo play Kill Team campaign, and the reason why I'm doing that is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of members of my gaming groups have family members they're concerned about, catching the COVID-19. So because of that, they're just self-quarantining at home to make sure that the loved ones are perfectly safe. So because of that, we really haven't gotten together to wargame all that much, and for obvious reasons. So because of that, in order to provide you guys content, I'm doing a solo campaign where basically I'm just playing both sides of the Kill Team forces, and then just kind of showing you exactly how it kind of works out for the most part. This campaign is kind of neat because we are using 4 different Chaos Legions in order to fight this out. We're using Death Guard for Nurgle, World Eaters for Khorne, Emperor's Children for Slaanesh, and Thousand Sons for Sneech. So it's been pretty interesting so far to see exactly how these Kill Teams stack up against each other. So that being said, real quick, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Alright, so let's talk about the scenario rules for this one. So the scenario for this one is called Sweep and Clear. It is a mission from the Kill Team core rulebook, and pretty much what's happening is that both kill teams are trying to control 4 different objectives. We have one objective on the top center of the battlefield, the bottom center of the battlefield, the left center, as well as the right center. And pretty much what we're doing is we're trying to occupy and hold on to these objective points. The victory conditions for this one is you earn 1 point of victory for every single enemy fighter you put out of action, and at the same time you also earn 3 points of victory for every objective you control by the end of the game. So as you can see, you can make a lot of points really quickly, especially since both of these kill teams are 200-point kill teams. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this works out. So with the mission rules over, let's go and talk about the deployment real quick. Alright, so first of all, starting off with the Death Guard, right here in the center chamber, we basically have 5 Plague Bearers. Up on the right hand side, that is Urg the Pestilent. He's a Plague-ridden who's got a Plague Sword. Right behind him is Trudge, that's Glouch Glibblelori. He's the Plague Bearer Hornblower. He's also got a Plague Sword. He's also got the Instrument of Nurgle as well. Right next on the left hand side, that is Boiling Ruin, who is a Plague Bearer, which is a Plague Sword. Next to him is Festering Jawbreaker, which is another Plague Bearer with Plague Sword, as well as Dueling Slint in the back there, which is another Plague Bearer with a sword. Plague Sword is basically equivalent. And finally, we have, of course, Trudge Deathbile. He's a Plague Bearer Icon Bearer. He's got a Plague Sword as well as an Icon of Nurgle, and then right next to that center objective there, protecting it. And to the left of them, of course, we have a little posse of Plague Marines. So starting off, leading up in the front, that is Malignus Diresong. He's my Plague Marine fighter. He's got a Plague Knife, Flail Corruption, Blight, and Crack Grenade, so it's my combat specialist. Next to him is Festimus the Bellman, which is the Tally Man. He's a Plasma Pistol with Blight as well as Crack Grenades. He's also got the Strategist Specialist. Right next to him in the back, that is Gerlach Muttermold, a Plague Marine Gunner, who's got a Plague Knife, Blight Launcher with Blight and Frag Grenades. He's also the Heavy Specialist. And right behind them is Bubo the Rancid, which is another Plague Marine. And then finally on the left-hand side here, we have a little 5-man unit of Poxwalkers. Those are Briggs, Darrows, Gallows, and Dirge. They're led by Thrax the Reeking, who is a Poxwalker, who's also a Zealot as well. And then right behind them, we got 1 Plague Marine, as well as 2 more characters. In the center of that is Golcore Muttermold. He's a Plague Marine armed with a Plague Knife, Plasma Gun. He's also got Black and Crack Grenades. And then right next on the right hand side, that is Shurlo the Ribbon. He's got a Champion who's got a Power Fist, a Plasma Gun, Blight, and Crack Grenades. He's also Leader Specialist as well. And that pretty much makes the deployment for the Death Guard. Alright, so moving on for the World Eaters. Over in the top right hand corner, starting on the left hand side there, that is the Ovine Ukris. He is a master of executioners. He's also the commander of this company as well. He's got the Axe of Dismember, a bolt pistol, a frag grenade. He's also got the Marker Corn. He's also got the Feared Huntsman, warp-sided Butcher special rules. He's also a strength specialist. Right in front of him, that character is Konarek Thaxos. He is a Corn Berserker. He's got a bolt pistol, chain axe, frag and crack grenades, Marker Corn. He's also packing the Icon of Wrath. You also have Agrivian the Destroyer, which is a Berserker champion. He's got a Combo Plasma, chain axe. He's got frag and crack grenades as well as a Marker Rune as well. Next to them on the right hand side, behind that crate, next to that ejector mark on the right hand side, that is Lyrak Kor. He is a Berserker Destroyer. He's armed with Plasma Pistol, Chain Axe, Frag and Crack Grenades. He's also got the Marker Corn. He's also a Combat Expert. And right next on the far right hand side, that is Garax the Butcher. He's just a normal Corn Berserker with Bolt Pistol, Chain Axe, Frag Crack Grenades, as well as the Mark of Corn. And finally, across the battlefield in the center deployment area is another 5-man unit of Bloodletters. Right in the back, right on the right-hand side there, that is, what's his name? Enzel the Night Reaper. He is a Blood Reaper with a Hellblade. Right next to him, of course, is another Bloodletter Icon Bearer. That's Gaze of Death. Armor of the Hellblade was Icon of Corn. Then we have the Skull Collector, which is a Bloodletter with Hornblower. He's got a Hellblade as well as Instrument of Corn. And of course, we got 2 regular Bloodletters, Rage Reaver as well as Onyx Rider. Both of those guys equipped with Hellblades. And that pretty much makes the deployment for this one. So deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 to see which of these kill teams will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the end of turn number 1 for the move phase, and here's the overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. And as you can see in this photo, the Death Guard start moving as quickly as they possibly can across the battlefield. First of all, that little group of Blood Plague Bearers in the bottom center, as well as the Plague Marines in the next chamber over to the left, they open up the doors to create this breezeway for them to move through. So you can see that the Plague Marines are starting to move over their way to the right-hand side as well, with Malignus Fire Song, as well as Bebo the Rancid, followed up by, of course, Goldcore Motor Mold with the Blight Launcher moving up to the north, as well as Festimus the Bellman occupying that center deployment area. At the same time, the Plague Bearers just kind of scoot a little bit to the front, to the top there, next to that door. They're keeping the door closed for now and kind of using it for cover. Now, while that's happening, of course, the Poxwalkers advance to the left-hand side of the battlefield to the upper left-hand corner, followed by their Space Marine counterparts. Now, of course, the Khorne Berserkers, of course, start making their charges as quick as they can. As you can see, Leovine Ukris actually, as well as Lyrak Kor, they actually move up as quick as they can, also engaging with those Plague Marines on the bottom right-hand side. Leovine Ukris stays exactly where he's at in order to protect that objective on the top marker, while the Bloodletters charge to the left directly into the Poxwalkers. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of Lyrak Kor charging directly into Urg the Pestilent, which is the Plague Ring there. As well, at the same time, you can see Garax the Butcher also charging into Glauch Gibbleglory, which is the Plague Bearer Hornblower as well. At the same time that's occurring, you can see Ugrivian the Destroyer as well as Konrak Thaxos moving as quick as they can across the battlefield past that Servo Hauler to help out their peers there in the bottom right-hand corner. At the top right-hand corner is a close-up of Leovine Ukris, just standing his ground to operate that door to open it up, so that way the rest of his movement can move through. And there's a close-up with Glauch Gibbleglory, just kind of standing his ground to protect that crate there in the middle of the table, while the rest of his Bloodletter friends move over to the left-hand side to charge directly into the Poxwalkers. In the bottom center, you can see Bebo the Rancid, as well as Festimus the Bellman, as well as Malignus Dire Song, kind of occupying the center chamber with their Goldcore Gorlock Motor Mold, as well as the rest of the Plague Bearers, just kind of secure that center objective. And over in the left-hand side, you can see a close-up of Enzel the Night Reaper, as well as Gaze of Death, as well as Rage Reaver and Onyx Rider engaging with the Poxwalkers on the left-hand side. Shirlo the Riven, as well as Gokor Mother Mold, as well as another Plague Marine moving up in order to kind of add some additional security on that part. And since there is no psychics in either side of that, we skip the second phase and move on to the shooting phase. Shooting phase is a wash, so we skip that, go directly to the combat phase. You can see in this photo, those Khorne Berserkers had no problem whatsoever putting the hurting directly on those 2 Plague Bearers, actually putting both those guys out of action and then following through 3 inches, heading directly towards Malignus Dire Song. And the reason why is because the number of attacks these guys end up getting with Lyrak Kor, as well as Garax the Butcher. You know, they get additional attacks for charging because they're also got the Butcher's Nails, but because they also want Blood for the Blood God, if they don't manage to secure any attacks in the charge phase and the remaining fight phase when they strike back, they can strike back again and basically fight twice per combat phase. So they just destroyed those Plague Bearers. Those Plague Bearers didn't really stand a chance. They just kind of flubbed when they tried to strike back and try to hurt these guys. So those Berserkers tore right through them and just moved all the way through, putting some pressure in the bottom area for the Death Guard. Meanwhile, on the top here, Gaze of Death manages to put down his Poxwalker and follows to another 3 inches to engage another one, and the rest of the fight just kind of flows between the rest of them. Not much really turning around. For this one, we do skip the morale phase because no one got wounded and there's no one needed to take morale test at this point. So with that being said, that pretty much brings up the end of turn number 1 for this one. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield at turn number 1. As you can see, the Death Guard are now starting to be being threatened down the bottom right-hand flank, being attacked by those Khorne Berserkers as they're assaulting through. At the same time, the advance of the Bloodletters in the top left-hand corner is being stopped right now into a stalemate by the Bloodletters that are stopping them in their path. And as you can see there off the top, looks like we got 2 victory points scored for the 15 Fangs of the World Eaters because they managed to kill 2 guys right off the bat. And that pretty much makes up turn number 1 on this one. So with that being said, we go directly to turn number 2. And this is the end of turn number 2, basically after the end of the movement phase for the most part. So as you can see here, a lot of offensive charging has taken place. Meanwhile, on the top left-hand side, basically Plague Marines have charged in order to deal with some of the Bloodletters there, fighting against the Poxwalkers to put some hurting on, going on there in the top left-hand corner. Meanwhile, Liorvine Ukris, the Master of Executioners, he just starts to move out of his little containment area down the corridor directly to the door. While that occurs, of course, the Death Guard decide to pop the door open and basically charge forward with 2 of their Plague Bearers directly into Liorvine Ukris to kind of stop him from making his advancements forward. Which is actually kind of a bad gamble for those guys because Liorvine Ukris is a Master of Executioners and those guys just chop through fools like it's nobody's business. While that is occurring, of course, the rest of the Berserkers in the bottom right-hand corner charge directly into Malignant's Dire Song. We got 2 Berserkers going into him, as well as Ugrivian the Destroyer, which is the champion, going directly into Malignant's Dire Song, and they're going to need all the help they can get because that guy's armed with a flail of corruption. At the same time, you could also see there on the bottom right hand side, Koryak Thaxos is moving as quick as he can, the little icon bearer, to try to help out. While that's occurring, of course, we also got some Plague Marines moving up forward to stop the gap from Liorvine Ukris moving forward, and then Belfestimus the Bellman just kind of stands his ground for the most part. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of Koryak Thaxos as he moves his way as quickly as he can around the Servo Huller in order to join the rest of his brothers in close combat. And here's a close-up of the Skull Collector, still maintaining control over that center objective, and Liorvine Ukris moving up forward and being engaged by Festering Jawbreaker as well as Duelan Slint, engaging those guys in close combat as well. And you can see that we also have Bubo the Rancid as well as Grillock Muttermold moving forward in order to engage with Liorvine Ukris if those Plague Bearers can't stop him. Meanwhile, here in the bottom of the center here, you can see that Ugrivian the Destroyer, as well as Lyrak Kor, as well as Garax the Butcher have charged directly into Malignant's Dire Song, the Plague Marine fighter and combat specialist for this team as well. You can also see a little bit of Boiling Ruin moving down a little bit in order to intercept any of those fighters that kind of happen to slip through in order to stop them getting to the objective. And you can see that Festimus the Bellman just kind of standing his ground for the most part. And up in the left-hand corner, you can see that Shurlo the Riven, as well as another Plague Marine, moved up forward in order to charge into Gaze of Death to engage in close combat, and the rest of the Bloodletters are engaged in close combat for the most part on that as well. So we skipped Psychic phase because there's no Psychers in these kill teams. We skipped the shooting phase because it's pretty much ineffective, and we go straight to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, oh my god, Malignant's Dire Song, the fighter with this fill of corruption, man, he just puts the hurting directly onto these Khorne Berserkers like it's nobody's business. The Khorne Berserkers just absolutely flood their attacks, so because of that, Malignant's Dire Song is completely fine. However, he puts a flesh wound directly onto onto Lyrak Kor, as well as Garax the Butcher, and he also managed to put Ugrivian the Destroyer right out of action. Just managed to smash that guy right in the head with 3 hits from that flail of corruption. It was absolutely atrocious. Needless to say, Malignant's Dire Song came out like this out of a champ, not suffering anything, putting 2 flesh wounds and an out of action result on Khorne Berserkers. Meanwhile, in the center of the battlefield, Liorvine Ukris had no problem destroying those Plague Bearers. The first thing he did, of course, is he used up one of his command points in order to do his body slam tactic that he has because he's a strength specialist. He rolls 2 6-sided dice, and he 6 he rolls, he gets a mortal wound, put 2 mortal wounds directly onto those Plague Bearers. Just killed them just by shoulder ramming those guys for the most part. So he destroyed those guys. He, of course, has a 3-inch follow-through, goes directly into Goldcore Muttermold, Grillock Muttermold, as well as into Bubo the Rancid as well, getting ready to engage those 2 Plague Marines in close combat. Now, he does suffer a wound, and the reason why he suffers the wound is because they decide to use the Festering Pus tactic, where basically if you manage to put an injury on a member of the Death Guard, they get to roll a d6, they roll a 6, they put a mortal wound on you. So because of that, Liorvine Ukris did suffer that mortal wound, so that part was kind of rough. Meanwhile, combat up here in the top left-hand corner was pretty brutal as well. What's his name? Rage Reaver managed to kill his Poxwalker, managed to follow through to engage Shirtle the Riven, because Shirtle the Riven managed to put down Gaze of Death and managed to follow through as well, engaging those guys in close combat. So once again, we got some melee happening for the most part up here on the left-hand side. Still pretty much a stalemate. Onyx Rider does also manage to put a flesh wound onto on Gallows, which is one of the Poxwalkers, so that part was kind of nice as well. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly in the morale phase. And in the morale phase, Garax the Butcher actually fails his leadership test because that he is shaken, so he will not be able to do anything for the next turn. At the same time, however, Lirat Core managed to pass his no problem whatsoever. And Gallows the Poxwalker failed his morale test, so because that he is also shaken as well, will not be able to do anything for the next turn as well. And that pretty much ends turn number 2 for this one. So here's a close-up shot, overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield at the end of turn number 2. As you can see here, unfortunately, the victory points are slowly going into the victory for the 15 Fangs. As you see that they earned 5 victory points of taking 5 fighters out of action, while currently right now the Death Guard only covering 2 victory points by taking out 2 fighters as well. So granted, the Death Guard do have numbers in this. They're the largest warband that we have in our campaign, while the 15 Fangs are the smallest. But those 15 Fangs, though, man, they're just really putting the hurt a lot on the Death Guard, especially over at Ukrit. Just imagining just the amount of destruction that guy can also cause as well. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and we roll for initiative to see who will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 3 on this one. This photo is taken after the move phase. As you can see, not much movement is really taking place for the most part. Everyone's pretty much engaged in close combat with all the counterparts. The only people who are not right now is Festivus the Bellman, and he basically just kind of stands his ground, doesn't really move. He's just sitting there kind of just collecting victory command points for his army, and at the same time just occupying and holding on to that objective as best he can. So here's a close-up of the battlefield. As you can see, Leo von Ukris is still engaged in close combat with Gurlock as well as Bubo the Rancid. They're still engaged in close combat. As you see, the 2 Plague Bearers are also kind of still engaged right now with their Butchers engaged in close combat. I do apologize, I did make a mistake in the last part. What's his name? Conrak Thaxos, he charged directly into the Malignus Dire Song. I forgot to mention that, I do apologize. So that's the Icon bearing, the Icon bearer who carries the Icon of Wrath. He charged directly into Malignus Dire Song to engage him in close combat. So that pretty much makes the movement here in the center. And over here in the top left-hand corner, everybody's still engaged in close combat with these Bloodletters, and no one's really moving for the most part. So with the movement phase over with, we skip the shooting phase, psychic phase, because there's no psychers in this one, and we also skip the shooting phase because the shooting phase was largely ineffective. So in the combat phase, good God, the combat phase, the Ovine Ukris, the Master of Executioners, show why this commander is so deadly. He just takes apart both Gurlock Muttermold as well as Bubo the Rancid, killing both those guys right off the bat. It was all kinds of horrific. Also follows through directly into Festering Jawbreaker, catching that guy into close combat with the Plague Bearers. At the same time that is occurring, the flail-wielding, of corruption-wielding Malignus Dire Song shows why the Plague Marine combat specialist is so dangerous. He managed to take out Lirat Core, which is the Cornbuzzer Destroyer. Just managed to smash that guy just to kill him outright. It was absolutely brutal seeing that death and destruction taking place for the most part. Just destroyed him with like 3 wounds. He actually, I think, rolled like 2 5s and a 6 to put him directly out of action. Now for the rest of the combat, I pretty much flubbed for the most part with that because I wasn't able to cause any wounds, and that pretty much makes the combat phase here in the center of the table. Meanwhile, combat between the Bloodletters as well as the Poxwalkers are starting to shift directly into the Death Guard's sway on this one. They do manage to take out Onyx Riders, so because of that Bloodletter ends up being killed, going directly out of action as well. I believe it was, what's his name? Shirlo the Riven was the guy who was actually able to do that. So because it kind of follows through and goes right behind Enzo the Night Reaper, basically surrounding that guy in close combat as well. The rest of the combat pretty much full-ups for the most part. Everyone's just kind of still engaged in close combat, but things are not looking very good in the upper left-hand corner there for the 15 Fangs. So with the combat phase over, we go directly to the morale phase. As you can see in this photo, Garax the Butcher does manage to recover his nerves because that he is no longer shaken. And the exact same thing happens for Gallows the Poxwalker, which everyone was kind of rooting for because Poxwalkers being broken is not fun whatsoever. And here's an overhead shot at the end of the battlefield for the end of turn number 3. As you can see, the Death Guard are starting to put the hurting directly in the upper left-hand corner for the 15 Fangs, just kind of chewing right through their Bloodletters. At the same time that's occurring, though, we have this huge melee taking place there on the bottom of the screen with Leovine Ukris and the rest of his Berserkers just kind of chewing their way through people. Leovine Ukris managed to put 4 guys out of action just by himself. He's just getting started, moving up downward in order to create his path of destruction. So things are looking really, really bad at that point. It's also at this point that we also go to the top of round number number 4. And we also roll a d6 to see if the game continues. But unfortunately it does not, netting a victory for the World Eaters, and the reason why is because they put more Death Guard out of action, earning victory points from that, and also combine that with the objectives they're currently in their possession, and they kind of just rank it right on top with all the victory points they've kind of made. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the battle report, and this battle report is officially over, and we go directly to the after action report. Alright, so now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we plan for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for the Quarantine Chronicles battle report number 3, and this one ended up being a victory for the World Eaters. The World Eaters managed to secure 13 victory points versus the 8 victory points that the Death Guard managed to secure. And this game, just the reason why, is just extremely brutal. Fighting in the depths of the Underhive with Zone Mortalis terrain pretty much made this entire battle report all combat. You got narrow corridors, not a lot of good sight lines for long range shooting, and people are blocking each other in the way. So because of that, the only thing you really can do is combat. So because of that, it kind of ended up being very much in the World Eaters' favor because they're really good at close combat. Most of their victory points were just from just killing people for the most part. I think 8 of their victory points just came from that alone, so they were pretty deadly on this one. This battle report was also really interesting to see just how powerful a Master of Executioners in Kill Team is, especially if he can, you know, dominate in the combat phase as well. He just pretty much dominated, just steamrolling over dudes like it was unstoppable. Khorne Berserkers also have the potential of being one of the deadliest units in the game of Kill Team in the combat phase. However, I did flub a lot of my rolls, so we didn't really get to see just how much damage these guys can actually put out for the most part. I am slowly, however, getting disappointed in Bloodletters. Bloodletters and Chaos Demons in general are not doing very well in this campaign so far. They're pretty lackluster for the most part. They just don't have enough hitting power. They don't have enough any skills or abilities to make them any deadly. I might be just better off just getting rid of those demons and actually replace them with more Khorne Berserkers, because those guys can at least shoot and stuff and throw grenades and things, aside from fighting as well. At the same time, the Death Guard are just showing in once again that the Masters are trolling. They have really high toughness, really have armor save, and their invulnerable save on top of that is really hard just to get through. Like I said, most of the losses for the Death Guard wasn't really from Plague Marines for the most part. It was primarily from Poxwalkers and Plague Bearers. Plague Bearers are kind of weak in Kill Team. I can see the appeal from having Poxwalkers a little bit because you might be able to get more back if you manage to kill somebody, but Plague Bearers, I'm thinking maybe I should get rid of those guys and just replace them with more Plague Marines, because Plague Marines are like the illest so far in this campaign. I'm just liking to see some of what they're doing. Like I said, in the end, this was an extremely brutal fight, extremely bloody in the combat phase, and I'm just also looking forward to seeing exactly what these guys do later on in the campaign. So that's going to do it for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news. You guys stay safe. You guys stay healthy out there. The world needs you more than you realize, all right? We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy, you guys.